A lot of things are imperfect, much like the talk that I'm going to be delivering right now, but that's beside the point. As much as I hate to admit it, I can't stand things not going my way. And it's an irrational way to think, right? Of course, there is going to be scope for things to go wrong. Murphy's Law itself states that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And because of that, a lot of us tend to go into things with low expectations. And by a lot of us, I mean especially me. Let me take the fine example of my very first piano recital. A memory that I've been desperately trying to suppress for so long, but here I am describing all the secondhand embarrassment to all of you in detail. It was a lesson like any other until my teacher dropped the bomb on me right before I left. She asked me, "Zulekha, you're signing up for the recital, right?" My face went blank. The words swerved right through my head and flew past me. I dreaded hearing that one sentence for the entire week, and when she first said it, I had no answer for her. What scared me more wasn't the fact that I was going to play for a hall full of strangers, no, but it was the word "right" she added at the end, implying that I wasn't answering a question, rather a confirmation. So I had to play for a hall full of strangers. I didn't want to let my teacher down. That was the last thing that I wanted to do, so I had no choice but to sign myself up for it. Instantly, I panicked, as I usually do, and I only continued to do so for the next 2 weeks until I somehow managed to prepare a 4-minute-long piece. Now, when the day came, I entered the performance hall, and my hopes were on the ground. I was convinced that the only thing I could possibly gain from this was a bad and potentially scarring experience. Simply looking around made my confidence take a 180 and disappear. All I saw were kids half my age, hauling around huge instruments that were twice their size, carrying sheet music for these impressive and complicated rock operas, all-time classics. And then there was me who came prepared with my mediocre wedding music. My piece was far from flawless, and clearly I was letting that get to my head. There was no turning back. There was no way I was going to be able to get a refund on this, so all I could do was tell myself to stay calm, go up, and be done with it. However, I must admit that it sounded much better in theory than in practice. Turns out the whole motivational spiel about pretending you're playing alone doesn't work out, because I am definitely sure I played all the wrong passages in front of my parents, in front of my teachers, and all the little kids who were far more prepared than I was. I expect nothing, and I'm still let down. But knowing what my outcome would be didn't automatically make things any better. Knowing that my prediction was right didn't mean that I wasn't disappointed in myself. The truth is, no matter how much you diminish your expectations to the bare minimum, we will still always subconsciously have this sense of hope at the back of our minds, no matter how much we try to deny ourselves of its existence. Discontent isn't avoided so easily. Imperfections themselves aren't avoided so easily, because they are and will always be a crucial element of our reality. I never really regretted that recital, even though I physically cringe every time my mom brings it up. It's one of the mistakes I'm proud of. My teacher always told me that you must make a mistake at least once on stage before you never repeat it again. And to this day, and for this moment right now, I always go back to that line of advice for reassurance. To know that it's completely okay if you don't achieve something on the first try, even if it feels like every single person around you is. No matter how much you prepare yourself, mentally and physically, you can never truly prepare yourself for something as unpredictable as life. Okay, so initially, I must admit, I was going to conclude over here, but then I realized I had 4 whole minutes to go. So in an attempt to make up for the time, I spaced out and started to think of the word perfection itself. It gets thrown around so much, right? You want the perfect smile, incomparable grades, the best pictures from your best angles, but what exactly are we even going after? It's such a subjective term because what's perfect to you may not seem so to me. And we have to realize that for every new perfection that we set, we are only setting a new reflection of disappointment because that will always be what follows. At the end of the day, it is literally nothing but a social construct, a figment of society. Perfection itself is so relative in the first place, and it's so easy to forget that because we place it on this pedestal that everyone can see, but nobody can reach. The Red Vineyard. That was the name of the only painting Vincent van Gogh sold throughout his entire career. It sold for 400 francs in Belgium 7 months before he tragically passed away. You know, a lot of people aren't aware that Van Gogh wasn't even a famous painter in his lifetime. He was actually quite the contrary. His life was riddled with struggle and poverty. But today, he is deemed as one of the greatest Dutch painters to have ever existed. It's so hard to imagine that someone like him, who has had such a presence on art as a field, was a simple nobody, a stranger when he was alive. The same goes for artists like El Greco and Henry Darger. These were all people who thought way ahead of their time. They revolutionized painting and art as we know it, and they brought forth unique and abstract ways of thought. But people like them, they were ostracized simply because they didn't fit into the mold of perfection that was set for their day and age. It took us years to recognize their talent, and that's how you realize not only is perfection a flawed and unnecessary concept made up by society, one big collective fever dream, not only is it that, but it is also time-sensitive and so fragile. And so fragile. People like them didn't have a place in society because their thoughts didn't match the views of everyone else. That's so unfair. What we have done, Vincent van Gogh still continued to pursue his career in art, although nobody recognized him or paid attention. But in today's world, criticism from society is amplified, and we can't afford to normalize this. We have trained ourselves to associate the word success with the word validation. We do not allow ourselves to succeed if we don't attain that validation from those around us. And since it's us against the rest of society, and since it's our opinion against everyone else's, we feel that this is just the right way to think, when it is clearly not. In my recital, I might not have been as good as the 8-year-old kid before me who played an impossible drum solo of Seven Nation Army. But disappointment is not something that I would ever associate with that experience. Because that perfect, exemplary, flawless piece that I was going after probably never even existed in the first place. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to say that let's make imperfection our reality again. Our life cannot amount up to a word as restrictive as perfection when the world around us is everything but. Thank you.